Hey guys, Pete here, and we got something special for you guys. Today, as promised, is a full tutorial on the Lanksy Sharpening System. I'll start you guys off with the knife that I'm going to be using. It's a junky little $5 Wartech USA rescue knife. It's got the seatbelt cutter and the glass breaker. I chose this knife for a couple of reasons. One, just to showcase the fact that you really should start out on something cheap that you don't mind ruining, because there is a learning curve to the Lansky system. It's not very long, it's not a hard system to get the hang of, but you should still practice on something you don't mind ruining. Secondly, is the fact that it's a nice simple blade shape to use. It's got a nice squared off spine, and it's got a relatively easy bevel to sharpen on this system, so it'll really just showcase how well the Lansky system can work on an edge that's ideal for it. And finally, I'm lazy, guys. This is a 440 series steel. It'll sharpen real quickly on this system, as opposed to like an S30V or a 154 cm. I don't have all day to record this video for you guys. Obviously, you're going to have it edited, but I have to do it in real time, so easier steel to sharpen. On to the kit itself. If you haven't already seen, I have an entire review on this system, as well as all the extra kit that I happen to have. So if you're unfamiliar with some of the things that you're seeing, check out that link in the description and see what I'm talking about. But just to give you a quick overview, this is the Lanksy 5-Stone Deluxe set. I have this mount, which is just a base for this clamp. It does not come with the kit standard. You have to buy it separately. I also have 2 strops and some polishing compound. In addition to all of that, what I recommend that you have is some blue painter's tape, a pair of pliers, some paper towels, and some cleaning supplies. Windex, acetone, isopropyl alcohol, any cleaning material that you have that will work well to basically clean up some gunk off of your edge once you're done. So long as it won't damage the blade, of course. It won't pit the blade or anything. So just something that's safe on steel. So we're going to start you guys off. First thing you have to do is prep the blade. This is an assisted knife, and it's actually one of the stronger assists I've ever had, which is kind of nice considering it's also one of the cheapest knives I've ever owned. So to prep the blade, all you're going to do is you're going to take some blue painter's tape. You're going to position it along the spine of your knife, like so. Try and center it, and just drape it down across the edges. And this is basically just to protect your edge. So I specify in the review there used to be 2 rubber pads on the inside of this clamp. Those fell off, unfortunately, and they were just there to protect the blade edge from the metal clamp. Now that they're not there, obviously there's nothing to protect the blade edge, or sorry, the spine of the blade. So to make up for that, little blue painter's tape. Now you're going to place the blade spine first into this clamp, and what you're going to try and do is have it be flush all the way back with this angle and with that angle. So it's just seated in there nice and solid. You'll feel it kind of want to click into place. Then you're going to tighten this first nut, just hand tight for now. There we go. Next thing that you're going to do is you're going to tighten this down here, this second nut. And again, I explained how the system worked, but for those of you who haven't seen that video, as you tighten the second nut down here, forces these apart. This first nut is threaded through both. It acts as a fulcrum, and it really clamps down tight on the blade, which is really nice. Now, according to Lansky, hand tight is more than enough, and I'm inclined to believe them. However, I like to do things overkill, so that's what the pliers are for. Now, note, Lansky does not recommend, in fact, they recommend against using pliers, because if you're not careful, you can A, over-tighten, and B, you can break these off. Mine are just plastic nubs, and I think that does depend on the model kit that you have, but in mine they're plastic, and they will break off if you're not careful. So keep that in mind. Next up, for me anyway, is I have a base. I highly recommend you get some form of base. They have C-clamps, they've got the workbench model like this. Get something, it makes your life a lot easier. Now, as for the hones, first question is, where do you start? Well, the first question you have to ask yourself is, well, why am I sharpening my knife today? If you're reprofiling your edge completely from scratch, so this is either you don't like the angle that's on your knife that you just bought, or there's a mar or a nick in your blade, or whatever reason you have, you want to completely reprofile the edge. You're going to want to start at the coarsest stone in this kit. That's a 70 grit extra coarse, and work your way all the way through the hones. If you were just touching up an edge, so you previously had this thing all the way mirror polished, maybe all you need to do is throw it on the strops and you're good to go. Maybe you've put it through some harder use and you got to go back a couple grits. That's totally fine. Go ahead and do that. But basically, the further up in the stones you start, so the finer the grit, the faster your sharpening is going to go, just because you don't have a lot of stones to go through. That being said, Sometimes you need the coarser grits because you need to remove a lot of material, in which case it will take you longer because you have more things to do, but you're starting from scratch and it will be able to some extent, repair a damaged blade. So keep that in mind. Today, just to show you guys the full gambit, we're going to go all the way back. We're going to reprofile. We're going to start with the 70 grit extra coarse. So what you're going to do is you're going to take out your hone. You're going to take out your rod. Let's see. Is this the straightest one I have, or is this? The straighter, the better, guys. So this one in my right hand, I'm fairly certain is the straightest one I have, so that's what we'll be using. All you're going to do, you're going to come in here. This flat right here should be pointing up, and this angle should be pointing down. Insert it into the hole. Flip the whole system upside down, flat on a piece of level table that you have. Preferably clean, but this will do for me. You don't want to gunk up your hones, but whatever. Everything flush to the table, this rod as well as the stone. Keep it all straight and in line to the best of your abilities. Tighten down on that wing nut just hand tight. People have cracked the back of this off because they over-tightened this, so keep that in mind. For me, it's not really an issue except for one of the stones. My ceramic stone, for whatever reason, the wing nut backs off all the time, and I do actually have to tighten it with the pliers. Otherwise, it's just unusable for me. Don't know why that is. Probably just a little quirk, but it's very annoying. So, oil, just going to take a little bit. Dab will do you, but, with oil, more is more. So, don't be afraid to get too much on there. Worst case, you waste a little oil. I like to, roll it around a little bit just so there's not just a big blob there, because otherwise it'll all get wiped off pretty much immediately. Alright, so now we're pretty much ready to sharpen. Now, tips and tricks. This is where this is going to start. So you've got four, let's see if I can get that in frame for you. You've got four angles that you can use: 17, 20, 25, and 30 degrees. It really is personal preference. The angle does determine what the knife can be used for properly. However, it really is mostly personal preference. Anything like 20 to 25, that difference, virtually unnoticeable. 17 to 30, all right, maybe you'll notice the difference there. But for the most part, personal preference. I put all of mine at 20 degrees. No particular reason, I just do. One shortcoming of my Lansky system, anyway, I don't know if this is ubiquitous throughout, but one shortcoming of mine is that for whatever reason, and you can kind of almost see it, for whatever reason, the way it's set up now, every now and then, at certain angles with certain knives, you will actually cut into the edge of the clamp, which sucks a lot. You'll ruin your edge that way because you're not actually making contact with it at that portion. You're only making contact with it beyond that, and it's just not good. So that, unfortunately, is one very big determining factor when you're going through. And also, like say I wanted to go all the way down to the 17, careful eye observer will note, I'm making contact with this little knob here well before I'm making contact with the blade. I'm not really sure why that is, Lansky, but I wish you guys could fix that. So that is one rather large shortcoming of this system. That being said, 20 degrees I normally don't have an issue, though it will depend on the blade you're using. And just do a visual inspection. It's hard to see for you guys because the clip's in the way, but I can tell that 20 degrees will be no issue on this side, and we'll just double check on the other side. You 110% want to check this first, because I've had to go back and completely redo an edge because of this problem. And 20 degrees will be just fine for that side as well. So we're in the clear, we're good to go. I'm going with 20 degrees. Now, as I specified in the review before, you have some variability in here because when you insert the rod, it can go up and down quite a bit, almost about 2 degrees of freedom there. To control that, what I do is I'll put my left index finger behind, and I'll apply gentle pressure up. And basically all that does is keep it in line at one consistent elevation, so that the angle is always the same. The only downside to this is that your finger will get, A, dirty, but you're sharpening, it's to be expected. But B, I've gotten blisters there before, so to prevent that, take a little bit of painter's tape, wrap it over the spot. Looks weird, but it works like a charm, so that's what I do. So now you're pretty much ready to get sharpening. Now, I don't remember what angle I did this one at, but by looking at it, it seems to be 20 degrees, which will make things easier for me. Now, when you're sharpening, you're going to be using basically every sense you have except for taste. So, well, and smell, I suppose. You're going to want to be able to feel the blade as you're sharpening. You're going to feel the difference in the grits going across as you hit high spots, as you hit low spots. You're going to be listening. You're going to hear the difference between different grits. And you're going to be able to see, as the light bounces off at different angles, you're going to be able to see what parts of the blade you missed and what parts you haven't. So there's a couple different techniques you can use for sharpening. You can go up and down like so and go across the blade. It's good for bulk material removal, but I don't like it because it's kind of inconsistent if you do it this way. Because as you can imagine, if you stay on one spot for too long, you take off a bit more material on that one spot. You can go single strokes, which I prefer, which is just one long sweeping stroke, either forward or backwards across the blade, either up or down. This is what I prefer to do. You can slide back and forth kind of like you would with a wicked edge. It's a similar motion, except it's not as circular. Really, it's up to you what kind of surface finish you want, because it will depend where the grind lines go when you have to finish up and polish everything. But for the most part, it's kind of personal preference. Like I said, for me, I prefer the long sweeping arcs like this. I feel that works best for me. I feel it's very consistent. As for the number of passes, there really is too much variability for me to give you guys like a rule of thumb, because it depends on the blade steel that you're using. If it's really, really hard steel, it's going to take more passes. It depends on how much pressure you're applying. I don't know how much you're applying. I don't know what you consider medium pressure. So if I tell you to do 20 passes and you're going at it like a 2-ton gorilla, well, you're going to wear away half of your edge. So I'm not going to give you guys some magic number, some magic bullet for how many times to go over it. Really just visual inspection. So I went over that a good couple of times. I wasn't counting. All I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe it away, and I'm going to look. And if I can see that there's a portion that I missed, like along the tip. By the way, pardon the wear you see. That's not from the system currently. That's from other scrapes and cuts. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get this in focus for you. But on that edge, you can kind of see the tip is sharpened up to a point, and then the angle changes right at the end there. There, you can see it. Basically what happened is I haven't cut far enough into the blade on that portion. So all I'm going to do is double check that I'm going... Whoop, there we go. Double check that I'm going back into the 20-degree hole, because I've had that happen too, where I put it back incorrectly. And just go over that point on its own a little bit. And then I'm just going to slowly draw it back. The tips can be a bit difficult to do for a couple of reasons. One, when I start with the really coarse grits, like the 70 grit, I want to do it kind of quickly, just bulk material removal. The problem with this is if you're going too fast, when you come off the edge like this, you have the tendency to slip off past the edge of your tip and then come back at it and whack into your tip with the stone itself. I've damaged quite a few tips that way. And unfortunately, I then overcompensated by taking off a lot of pressure as I got closer to the tip. By doing that and kind of lifting off right before I hit the tip was never properly sharpened, which is a huge pain in the butt. It's a real hassle. So consistency. Consistency is your friend. Be as consistent as possible throughout the entire process. And I feel like this should go without saying, but I've seen some people who are unfamiliar with sharpening. You're using the flat of the stone. You do not want to be rolling on the edge. The edge has more tendency to chip. It's less strong, and therefore it's going to be more inconsistent along the edge itself. If you get divots in the stone, like you will naturally just from use, and you're going at it with the corner, you're going to seriously screw up your edge. So you're using the flat of the stone on the flat of the bevel. Just keep that in mind. So after you do a good couple of passes, and it seems consistent to you, and it's not quite there yet, but I'll be able to get it after a few more passes, you're going to then rotate, flip the whole clamp around, and you're just going to go at it from the other side. Now you can probably hear, though I don't know how good my microphone is, but you can probably hear the difference when you first start out and you're going at an angle that's either unfamiliar to that bevel or you're just hitting a burr that you've worked up. It's going to sound different. It's going to sound harsher. In which case, you're just going to have to bear through it until it starts to smooth out. You'll feel it smooth out. You'll see it smooth out. Like I said, you're using practically all of your senses here besides taste and smell. Just going through. Now, if it starts getting really gritty, you can reapply oil. You can see I've got plenty on there. I don't need to reapply anytime soon. But if you're worried about it, or if you're worried about the temperature of your edge and losing your temper, which you shouldn't be by hand sharpening, but if you're worried about that, you can apply more oil as needed. So we're getting to the point where we're actually doing this pretty quickly because, again, it already had a 20-degree bevel on it, so I don't have to work out too much material, which is very convenient. So I'm just going to flip this over again. So basically what's going to happen is I'm going to show you how I go through the process all the way with this one stone, the 70 grit. And then it's almost identical for all the stones thereafter. So I'm going to cut after this all the way until I get up until my, my ultra fine. So the last thing that you need to know is that what I do anyway, and by the way, let me just preface all of this. I'm no expert. I've had some experience with this system for a bit over a year now. And I've gotten some really good results out of it, and I've gotten some not so good results out of it. So what I say is not law of the land. Experiment on your own, figure out what you got, and go from there. Listen to other people as well. I don't know everything. So what I do for this is when I'm finishing up with this stone, the coarsest stone, from then on, what I'll do is I will only draw the hone up the blade like you saw me doing there. I will no longer come back down the blade. What I mean by that is not forward or backwards, I mean physically, I will only draw the hone up. Personal preference, don't know if it actually makes a difference. I feel like it does. Basically, in my mind, what it's doing is it's helping to drag some of that material away from the edge of the tip. I don't know if it actually is, but it feels like it is to me. Plus, I feel like it gets rid of that burr a bit better. See, I'm not paying attention now, and I'm kind of chipping into the edge of my blade here, into the tip of it, so I got to be careful with that. But we're just about done with this stone. And if I can find a piece of paper lying around, I'll show you just how sharp it can be after just this one super coarse stone. And it's actually quite impressive what happens when you get a really good system like this, and you get a good apex right out of the box. Something else to note, so this is a junky trainer. I don't really care too much about what happens to it, so I'm just kind of going at it full bore here. But something to note is if you're not careful, you will dig into a choil if your knife has a choil, or the ricasso section back here. So if you can see that, see if that'll focus for you. I'm going into this choil and into the flat back here a lot, into the guard. And it's carving away material. Very not good on a high-end knife. I'm just doing it because I don't care too much about this knife. But obviously you would take far more care if you were doing a knife you, well, cared about. So let me see if I can find some paper that I can use here. So this is after the lowest level of sharpening. And already I can kind of get some cuts out of it. Now, nothing really impressive. I can't, like, do any pressure cuts or anything, but you can cut paper with it, and that's pretty nice considering this is the coarsest grit we have. So that's pretty much it for this. I'm gonna cut here. You should see me come back when I'm all the way at the end of the ultrafine, because that's when things start changing a little bit in technique. Till then, guys, I will see you in a moment. Alright guys, so we're on the last stone that we're using, which is the ceramic ultrafine. I believe they call it 1000 grit. And this is where things are going to change a little bit. So first off, this is the stone I mentioned before that gives me some trouble with that wing nut. So I will just ever so slightly tighten that with a pair of pliers. Not recommended, but for me it's kind of necessary. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clean your blade. So the ceramic hone, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I've been informed, does not use oil. You don't oil that hone. And really you're polishing and not cutting, so it makes sense that you wouldn't really need it. Be very careful when doing this, by the way. The knife is now extremely sharp, and you want to be careful with it. So just very carefully kind of wipe the oil off, and you're ready to go. So with this hone, things change ever so slightly. You're not making a huge change to your technique. The only difference for me is that I'm applying a bit more pressure than normal. So as I'm going through, you can hear the difference, first and foremost. Compared to the very first stone, there's a huge difference in the sound that it's making. It's very smooth. You're not grinding away material anymore. You're just kind of polishing it now, smoothing it down. Now, this is when you're going to start to see your mistakes, and it's very frustrating when that happens, but it will. So as I'm going through with this, what I'm seeing is a change in the surface finish. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I'll try and get it in frame for you. But basically, you can kind of see your own reflection there a little bit. That's where that polishing is happening. But what you'll notice down here, there we go, is there's kind of a second line right below that, closer to the edge, that is not polished. That tells me that there's inconsistency in my angle, which is very frustrating, and I wish I could say I was doing that intentionally to showcase for you guys what happens when you do it wrong. But no, I just wasn't paying too much attention. Admittedly, I'm not putting, I'm not putting too much care into this, because again, it's kind of a junky blade, and I'm kind of on a crunch for time right now, but ideally, if you see that happen, as frustrating as it is, go back down 1 grit. 2 if it's really pronounced. I might go back 2 for this because it's kind of really bad. But like up here, I can see there's a little bit of inconsistency towards the tip. Go back 1 grit, maybe 2, and just go over it, spend some more time. That's how you really determine how long you need to spend on a particular stone. So I'm just going through here, and I am putting a decent amount of pressure behind it now because, again, we're trying to polish here. I'm not worried about taking off too much material anymore. So we're just going to go through real careful like. You can still damage your tip if you slide off and come back into it, and I've almost done that just now, but I think we're good. Now that is a sharp edge already. Now, obviously, it's not done yet. We're still going to go through the strops because I want to show that for you guys, but even as is, it's kind of hard to do with it still in the clamp, but just to show for you guys. Now, keep in mind, there we go. Keep in mind, this edge is far from perfect, but towards that belly right there where it's done well, you're getting some pretty nice slices. Now, when we go through and strop it, it's going to be even nicer. So, give me 1 minute to go get the strops and everything set up, and I'll be right back, guys. Alright, so we're finally on to the final stage, which is stropping your edge. In this case, I'm going to start with green, which is chromium oxide. I don't know where it stands on there. It's kind of a mid-range polishing compound. And then I'm going to go to a blue compound, which will be my final one, which is the finest that I have in my kit anyway. So a lot of people are unfamiliar with how to apply to a strop, which, understandable, I was too. Basically, it's literally like using a crayon. You're going to take your polishing compound, and you take your strop in the other hand, and you're just going to kind of paint it on. Now, like I said in my review, I got my polishing compound for very cheap, and it shows. These things are bricks. They're rock solid, and it doesn't help that my room's kind of cold. If they're warm, it helps a little bit, because the wax is really dense, and it makes it rather difficult to apply. You can kind of see on my my strops already that that black that's on there, that's from previous use. As it picks up material from the edge, it turns black. Unfortunately, I can't seem to properly apply this ever. It does go on, it's just a pain, and it clearly is taking longer than it should. I've heard of ways to make this go faster if you heat the bricks up with, over a stove or something to kind of melt the wax a bit. It will apply a bit easier. It kind of does, but I think I just have poor quality polishing compound. It will still work just fine. But it's just kind of a pain in the ass to apply it. So keep that in mind when you're getting your compound. Maybe don't splurge on it. Maybe get something a little bit higher end. But otherwise, everything's exactly the same. The only difference is I'm going to use something kind of like cleaner than my table for this, because this really matters now to put the strop on whilst I'm doing this. So same as before, I'm just going to tighten that wing nut, make sure everything's flat and in line. There we go. And you're pretty much ready to rock and roll. One of these strops, I don't remember which, also loosens, kind of like the final hone, but I'm not going to worry about that now. The only thing you have to know about stropping is that you can no longer go up your blade. If you go this way towards the spine, you're going to destroy your strop. You have to always strop down from spine to edge. It is the only direction you can safely strop in, okay? You will ruin your strops. These are Lansky strops. They're from the company direct. They're like 10 bucks a pop. I do not want to ruin them. And you're just going to go back and forth. So just so you can see the difference here, that's where I'm contacting the blade. That's where I wasn't. This is the color change that you'll see. This is telling me I should probably load on a little more compound before I go to the next side. If you had better compound, you probably wouldn't need to reapply this often, but you know, I get what I get. You get what you pay for, basically. Oh, another note for people who are inexperienced with strops. You cannot mix compounds on the same strop. A, I'm fairly certain there is no way to properly clean off this compound, so whatever you choose, stick with it. And B, if you mix compounds, you defeat the purpose of the finer compound that you're using. Basically, this is coarser than this. And if I put both of them on the same strop, it doesn't matter if, oh, but there was green on there and it's all wiped off. No, there's still some green on there. You're gonna just get the polishing that you'd get with this one. It defeats the purpose of using two different compounds. You need a separate strop for each compound. So keep that in mind. That should do it. Now, normally I would go through quite a few more times, but I'm just here to show you guys the procedure. Again, this is not a knife that I use regularly, so I don't quite frankly care if it's in tip-top shape. So that'll be good for now. Let's just take a look at that. Now again, did not do an amazing job, but it feels pretty darn sharp. Unfortunately, I've already shaved off most of the hair on this arm, so don't know how well that's going to work. But take my word for it, it's sharp. When I get this guy out of the clamp, I will do a proper cut test for you. So let me just show you how to do that now. So first things first, you're just going to do everything backwards. So you're going to loosen this bottom one first, which of course I felt the need to make super tight. So we're just going to loosen that up with the pliers. Just get it started there. The rest can be done by hand for the most part. There we go. Not too much because this will fall out. You don't want to lose it. And then this top one loosens up real easily. And then just kind of wiggle the blade and it pops right out. Set that off to the side. Then you're just going to want to peel off your painter's tape. Good. There we go. Now, with a clean, preferably clean, paper towel, this guy's been saved, and whatever cleaning supplies you have, in this case, you know, some ShopRite brand Windex, we're just going to clean this off a little bit. Like I said, any cleaner that you use that will be gentle enough on the blade, but strong enough to remove the grime from A, the tape, and B, from the wax, will be plenty. Ideally, you don't want to use just water just because, you know, you don't want to put water in your blades. But if you have something like isopropyl alcohol, that'll work just fine. Acetone will work just fine. Anything that'll clean off this gunk. And about the painter's tape real quick, you can use any tape you want technically. Painter's tape is just ideal because it's really low tack. What that means is the sticky stuff on the back is not that sticky. The whole point of painter's tape is that when you peel it off a wall, it won't rip off the paint. So same thing here, when you apply it to a blade, when you peel it off, it's not going to leave a lot of residue, which is nice. So again, I just give us a very cursory kind of, you know, wipe down to get the oil and grease off. I don't care too much. Normally you'd sit here and do it properly, but it's good enough for me. So let's see if you guys can get a good look at that edge. You can kind of see yourselves in it. There you go. Say hi to the camera. That, my friends, is a mirror polished edge on the Lansky system. I'll have to throw in some glamour shots for you guys right now as well. It's just a really, really excellent system for the price. You really can't beat it, to be honest. See if I can get some cut tests in here for you guys. There we go. So, now be warned, this is not a true fair test because I kind of half-assed it. But even then, with the minimal amount of effort I actually put into this, yeah, so you can get some soft spots wherever you missed that apexed edge. But for the most part, it's not bad. Far from perfect, mind you. Far from perfect. But considering how little effort I put into that just to show you guys the process, that's pretty darn impressive. Not a lot of things you can kind of half-ass and still get really good results like that. So I hope you guys are enjoying these glamour shots. It really is gorgeous to see a nice mirror polished edge like that. So thanks for watching, guys. I know this video is a bit long, but it kind of had to be. I wanted to give you guys a full tutorial, as full of a tutorial as I could. But that's the Lansky system for you guys. It's an excellent system. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was informative enough. If you have any questions in particular about something I may have kind of glossed over, or may not have included at all, maybe I forgot to, feel free to ask in the comments. I have no problem getting in dialogue with you guys and just talking about what you need to know that maybe I forgot. Thanks again for watching. I've got tons of videos planned for the future. We have a couple of knife reviews coming up as well. We've got something special coming in the mail. Should be here tomorrow. By the time this video is up, it should already be here, and I should hopefully have already have the review for it filmed and ready to go for you guys. I'll give you a hint. We're reviewing our first fixed blade. And I also have some discussion videos coming up. Like I said, some philosophies for EDC, when to buy a junk knife, some self-defense carry options, just some fun topics that I think you guys will enjoy. Thanks again for watching. Comment if you have any questions at all, if you want me to clarify anything. I really appreciate the feedback, guys. Thanks again. Have a great one, and I'll see you next time.